Today's Daily Mail is reporting that, as usual, the British public is far more intellectual than their leaders, with 2 in 3 Britons having safety fears over Keir Starmer's digital ID card scheme, a poll reveals. Yes, as usual, the great British public know what's what, don't they? They know far more than the collection of reprobates and hypocritical imbeciles that run the country. Because there's numerous reasons to be very, very sceptical about the digital ID scheme. People like me that have pointed out that the British government seems to be operating under the idea that Demolition Man was a marvellous how-to guide on how to run a nation state. I've been saying this for years. It's not all on Labour, of course. Every shambling incompetent that's run the show in the UK for the last 25 years, which is to say they've been treating George Orwell's masterpiece 1984 as if it's an instruction manual on how to run a country. So I'll read you this story and I'll give you 5 rock-solid reasons why you should be extremely sceptical of the androgynous android and, everybody else in Parliament that thinks it's a good idea to build a gigantic database with all of your personal information on it, and then stick it all on a portable hard drive and leave it in the back of a taxi, the driver of which sends 25% of his income to the Taliban every month. Okay, starting at the top, the public fear Keir Starmer's digital ID card scheme will not be safe. Yeah, it won't be safe. It won't be safe. Definitely not. The amount of scandals over the last couple of decades where pissed up MPs have left top secret dossiers on trains and buses and in the back of taxis and tucked behind a seat in a plane are replete. I'm not even going to bore you by pulling the individual stories up. Suffice it to say, there's been dozens of them. So why would you trust these morons with any more data than is absolutely necessary? It says polling has found that almost 2/3 of Britons don't trust the government to keep their digital identity. I wouldn't trust the government to run me a bath, let alone keep my digital identity secure. I would rather trust Ian Huntley to do the babysitting than trust a British politician with my data. Thanks all the same. Polling for civil liberties group Big Brother Watch found that 63% of Britons don't trust the government to keep their personal information secure. Yes, because Britain's full of sensible people. How many times have I said it in the past? Trust the public. The public know better than the morons that run the show. Matthew Feeney, advocacy manager of BBW, said that YouGov's survey of 2,153 people shows that people fear their data would be stolen in a cyber attack. He told the Daily Mail, on top of digital ID scheme being a civil liberties disaster, it would also represent a significant cybersecurity risk. The government should abandon plans for a digital scheme immediately. The warning follows a series of cyber attacks against British national infrastructure and a colossal data leak when the details of more than 18,000 people who had applied for asylum under the Afghan resettlement scheme ended up in the hands of the Taliban. And that's only a recent one. This is only the most recent of dozens of examples of incompetent civil servants and politicians being about as responsible with your most important data as Diane Abacus would be if she was responsible for, running a all-you-can-eat Chinese buffet. There wouldn't be anything left for the customers. Fatty'd be shoveling it all into her face with reckless abandon the second the owner turned his back. The Prime Minister is said to be looking at the idea because he's desperately thrashing around to find a solution to the small boats crisis. Think of this rationally, right? As usual, I'm not going to get to the bottom of the story because I'm just going to go on a rant, but think of this rationally. Okay, it's not rocket science, so I don't need to go slow. We know that the people breaking in on dinghies are illegal. None of them have right of abode in the UK. None of them, or else they'd fly into Heathrow. It's cheaper. We know they aren't allowed to stay, technically. I mean, logically they aren't, but they are anyway. We know nothing about them. We don't know who they are. They have no documents at all, and they are definitely illegal. But they are still all allowed to stay anyway, okay? So this is difficult to grasp, but hear me out. If we introduce digital ID and all of you lot have all your data on a big computer, the people coming over on the dinghies won't have any digital ID, but lo and behold, they're in the exact same place that they are now, and they're all allowed to stay anyway. So what difference will digital ID make to the dinghy divers? Any different? No, zero difference. So all your data is going to get collected and it's going to make precisely no dent in the illegal immigration numbers because they'll be in the exact same situation they're in now and they're all allowed to stay anyway. So this is like some sort of evil scheme to try and convince morons, and it appears to have worked on 37% of the general public, that letting the government have all of your personal data would somehow help a migrant crisis that they've created on purpose to convince you that it's a good idea to give them all your data. Easy, innit? The plans would see digital IDs given to all people legally entitled to reside in Britain, and they would be used for employment verification and rental agreements. The concept was dated back to Tony Blair. Oh, okay. Well, if the Dark Prince of Evil floated it as an idea, it's definitely worth doing, isn't it? Those on the left argue they would be used repressively by future governments. Yeah, well, and the woke are all on board now because they've been successfully captured by the establishment. The old left was sceptical. The new left can't get enough of it. Tory MP Andrew Griffith warned yesterday that civil liberties would be at risk if a digital ID is implemented, and that a government that sought prison for tweets cannot be trusted with more control. Yes, Andrew, you win based comment of the day. Well done, son. He posted on X, a state that can't run the NHS IT system or secure our borders shouldn't be trusted to hold the keys to every citizen's identity. Yeah, again, I wouldn't trust them to run a lemonade stand in my front garden. This is how incompetent they are. And then lo and behold, what did I just say? Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey indicated he's open to considering his party's opposition. He told the Lib Dems conference that he's now open to the idea, provided they don't curb freedoms. Yeah, well, they're not just going to come round and tell you that, are they, you baldy gimp? Of course they aren't, but we know what's coming. So again, this is staggering. I mean, how stupid are people? As I've said, the ingenious manoeuvre from the woke sociopaths is turning the left into their creatures. That's what the woke project was all about. Think about it. The old left, Michael Foot and Peter Shaw and people like that, they actually had the interest of working people at heart. The modern woke thing, whatever it is, the new left is now pro-war. Think of that. The Guardian is like the warmongers' gazette these days. These people are deranged. The new left is pro-war, pro-government surveillance, pro-big pharma, pro-big bank. Think of it. That's all they did during the whole Brexit campaign. The new left are pro-capitalist, pro-big bank, pro-big pharma, pro-war, pro-very, very, very devout religious fundamentalists, as long as they've got a bit of a tan. Up is down, left is right. These people are completely deranged, and now the liberal is saying, oh, we definitely want the authoritarian government to have everybody's data. You can suck my stump, Edward. Big Brother Watch interim director Rebecca Vincent said nobody voted for it, it's not in the Labour Party manifesto, there's never been a public consultation, so they can suck it. Well, she didn't add that last part, but they can. Mandatory digital ID would fundamentally reverse the nature of our relationship with the state, turning Britain into a checkpoint society where an enormous burden will be placed on law-abiding people in having to prove ourselves to go about our everyday lives. Yes, Rebecca, well done. Aye. So take a leaf out of Rebecca's book, ladies and gentlemen. Just say no. Computer says no. Definitely. Because this won't make a single jot of difference to the dinghy divers, because they're not allowed in anyway. Apparently they're not allowed in, but they're all allowed in. Do you see how this works? So even though they're definitely not allowed in anyway, now, they're definitely not allowed because they're all illegal and they've got no documents, they can't prove who they are and we don't know anything about them, so they're definitely not allowed in, but they are allowed in. So they just let them in anyway and give them the Hilton, and then they go and roger people in parks and blow themselves up. So they're allowed to anyway. So the digital ID won't make a jot of difference. A centralised digital ID will allow the government and whoever they sell the information to, or, leave it in the back of a taxi, to track you far more easily than they ever have before. We already know they're using software on these 50,000 CCTV cameras all across the country to track you. They can track you everywhere, but they can't track Iqbal Rafiki when he just rocks up in a dinghy. So what's the point in it? There's no data security. You'll be forced to comply to do everything from picking up your mail to buying some cans. There's no way around it. It's of no use to the scumbags that are breaking in. There is zero transparency from the Machiavellian sociopaths that run the state. And worst of all, and I think this is something not a lot of people have thought about, is the fact that it's going to make you dependent on technology. You know how, like, back in the good old days, when you had to, like, turn up somewhere with a copy of your provisional driver's license or something, as long as you kept your provisional driving license in a biscuit tin in your house, you always had it. You could always use it. How many times in the last few decades has the system failed? Oh, we can't do that. The system's down. If everything is reliant on a digital system, something as small as a power outage will make a bog standard trip to the off license so you can drink yourself into sweet oblivion just so you can forget about your problems for 2 hours. It'll make that impossible. They'll be like, oh, sorry, the system's down. You can't have a drink. Just go and have a glass of council pop and sit in your house, lamenting the fact you used to live in a free country, you dopey twat. How's about that? Anyway, but that's my opinions for the day. Let me know if you disagree, if you think digital ID sounds like a fantastic idea, because you'd love to be locked in a dungeon and tonked by a robotic state-sponsored dungeon keeper. Let me know. Let me know in the comments. It sounds marvellous. But no, I think if it's all the same to you, I won't trust a psychopath like Keir Starmer with all of my personal information. Thanks very much. I mean, I'll just come home in a dinghy next trip if I need to. It'll be good because I won't have to pay for a hotel, will I? They'll put me up in the Hilton. Doesn't matter if I was an Egyptian suicide bomber. They'll just put me up in the Hilton and I won't have to pay for any of my food, clothing or entertainment. So I might just do that if they introduce a digital ID. Easy. As always, that's me for the day, but tune in tomorrow. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching. See you later. Toodle pip. Cheers.